When you think about the mob, Al Capone, The Sopranos, it's got this powerful grip on our imagination, right? We picture these secret societies, these men of honor, pulling all the strings from the shadows. But how much of that is just Hollywood fiction? And what's the cold, hard reality? Well, that's exactly what we're here to find out. It's true. This love affair with gangsters has created this thick fog of myths around them. So in this explainer, we're going to cut right through all of that to really understand one of the most successful and frankly ruthless criminal empires in American history, the Chicago outfit. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start by squaring Hollywood's version of the mafia against the real-deal Chicago outfit. Then we'll dive into who was really in the club and bust some major myths about how they operated. After that, we'll tackle that huge conspiracy about the Kennedy election. And finally, we'll look at what happened to them in the end. Okay, first things first, let's get right to the heart of it and tear down the biggest myth of all, this idea that the American mob was just some branch office of an ancient Sicilian secret society. So that popular image of the mob being shipped over directly from Sicily, that's largely a movie-driven fantasy. The reality is, the Chicago outfit was a uniquely American creation. It wasn't born in the olive groves of Sicily, but in the gritty, corrupt political machine of early 20th century Chicago. At its core, it wasn't about old-world values. It was a ruthless business, plain and simple, built on very American rackets like gambling, prostitution, and controlling labor unions. So if it wasn't the Sicilian mafia, what was it? Well, it was a powerhouse, a criminal corporation that, for a good long while, was one of the most successful businesses in America, legal or illegal. It started pretty small, really, with a guy named Big Jim Colosimo. But the real game changer was when Johnny Torrio took the reins and saw the gold mine that was Prohibition. After someone tried to take him out, Torrio passed the torch to his 26-year-old protege, a guy named Al Capone. And yeah, Capone is the one who turned it into a true criminal empire.
And if you want to understand the sheer scale of their success, just look at this number, $6 billion. That was the outfit's estimated annual revenue in 1961. Let that sink in. That figure absolutely dwarfed some of America's biggest legitimate corporations at the time. This wasn't just a street gang, it was an economic behemoth.
Which brings us to another one of those classic movie tropes, the idea that the mob was a totally closed society, a members-only club for full-blooded Italians. Well, in Chicago, the reality was way, way different. Just look at this list of some of their top guys. The Chicago outfit's leadership was incredibly diverse. You could even argue it was the most inclusive crime family in the whole country. And why? Their philosophy was dead simple, and one of their own guys, Joey the Clown Lombardo, said it best. The only color that mattered was green. If you were a good earner, you were in. Simple as that. All right, let's keep going and bust two more of the most stubborn myths about how the outfit did business. One is about how you got in, and the other is about a type of business they supposedly wouldn't touch. So, what about those super dramatic ceremonies you see in the movies? The pricking of fingers, burning a picture of a saint, swearing allegiance for life over guns and swords. Did every new member have to go through that? Well, according to Joey Lombardo himself, nope, never happened in Chicago. Some of the East Coast families, sure, they had those big theatrical rituals, but getting made in the Chicago outfit was much more like getting a promotion at work. You didn't need a blood oath, you needed a sponsor to vouch for you, and most importantly, a proven track record of making money. It was just business. And what about drugs? We've all heard this one, sometimes from mob guys themselves, like Joe Bonanno, who swore that so-called men of honor thought drug trafficking was beneath them. The reality? Oh, they were in it. Big time. After World War II, the outfit became a huge player in the drug trade. The key was their business model. They had a rule. Made members couldn't do the risky street-level dealing themselves. But the organization at the very top, they were deeply involved in importing and distributing for decades, essentially franchising out the risk to others. Now we're getting to the biggest myth of all, the one that connects the Chicago mob not just to City Hall, but all the way to the White House. I'm talking about the claim that the outfit stole the 1960 presidential election for John F. Kennedy. The story is absolutely legendary, right? Joseph Kennedy, the patriarch, cuts a deal with mob boss Sam Giancana. The mob gets JFK elected, and in return, the new administration's Justice Department looks the other way. It's a story of stuffed ballot boxes and gangsters strong-arming voters. But is any of it true? This is where that whole conspiracy just crumbles when you look at the data. Political scientists actually went back and analyzed the voting results ward by ward. And what they found was fascinating. They found only a very weak statistical link between outfit-controlled areas and votes for Kennedy. But you know where the link was incredibly strong? It was for votes against the Republican candidate for state's attorney, a guy named Benjamin Adamowski. So think about what this really means. The outfit's number one enemy wasn't Richard Nixon, it was the local prosecutor who was a direct threat to their illegal rackets. Any extra votes JFK got were just a side effect, a spillover. The mob wasn't playing 4D chess to install a president, they were playing defense to protect their own wallets. So, if they were so powerful, how did this seemingly invincible empire finally start to crack? Well, it happened when the one single rule that held the entire thing together was finally shattered. Omerta, the famous code of silence. For generations, this was the absolute, unbreakable law. You did not talk to the feds, ever. The penalty was death, no questions asked. It was the very glue that held the whole organization together. And then the glue just dissolved. The federal government got really smart. They created powerful tools like the RICO statute, which meant mobsters were facing life sentences, and the Witness Protection Program, which gave them a way out. And suddenly, the unthinkable started to happen. High-ranking guys, including outfit soldiers like Nicholas Calabrese, started talking. The code was broken, and the organization began to eat itself alive from the inside. Which brings us to our last thought here. The old-school Chicago outfit, as we knew it, it's really just a ghost of what it once was. But that leaves us with the much bigger question, doesn't it? Was that kind of organized crime really defeated, or did it just evolve? Has it simply changed its face for the 21st century, becoming quieter, more corporate, maybe even more global? Now that's the real story to watch.